The wagon wheel cracked like a gunshot. Mara didn't scream when it happened. There wasn't time. One moment she was bracing against the wind that tore through the mountain pass, her frozen fingers gripping the side rail as the caravan lurched over another hidden rock. The next, the world tilted sideways, and 2,300 pounds of wood, iron, and canvas came down on her legs with a sound like kindling snapping. Then she screamed, "Mara!" Her younger brother's voice, high and panicked, cut through the wind. She tried to answer, but her lungs had seized. The pain was a white-hot thing, climbing from her crushed legs up through her spine, turning her vision into a narrowing tunnel. Snow whipped across her face. She could see boots, her father's boots, standing 3 feet away. "Papa," she managed. The word came out broken. Thomas Kincaid stood over his daughter with snow gathering on his shoulders and hat, his face carved from granite. The blizzard howled around them like something alive and hungry. Behind him, the other 2 wagons had stopped, their canvas covers snapping in the gale. Mara could see faces peering out, her mother's pale oval, barely visible through the storm. Her brothers, the hired men. "Get it off her!" That was Jacob, 16 and too young to hide the terror in his voice. He was already moving forward, reaching for the wagon's edge. "Stop!" Their father's voice carried the weight of absolute authority. Jacob froze. Mara tried to push against the wagon, but her arms had no strength. The cold was already seeping through her clothes, and she could feel something wrong in her legs, something torn and grinding that made her stomach lurch when she tried to move. "Papa, please!" Her teeth were chattering so hard she could barely form words. "Please, I can't—" "Quiet." Thomas crouched down, but he didn't reach for her. His eyes moved over the pinned wagon, calculating. Always calculating. "The axle's shattered. Even if we could lift it, the wheel's done. We'd need to redistribute the load, repair the frame. That's half a day's work. Maybe more." "So we do it," Jacob said. "We can— in this?" Thomas gestured at the storm. The wind answered him with a shriek that made Mara's bones ache. "Temperature's dropping every minute. We're losing light. Another hour, and we won't be able to see the trail." Mara felt something cold settle in her chest, and it had nothing to do with the snow soaking through her dress. She'd seen that look on her father's face before, when they'd had to leave behind their plow horse after it broke its leg outside Fort Laramie. When Mrs. Henderson's baby came out blue and silent, and he told Mr. Henderson they needed to keep moving. When old Tom Brennan got too sick to ride and asked to be left with dignity instead of dying slow in a wagon bed. Her father was doing math. Lives against miles, hours against temperature, risk against reward. "We can pull her out," her mother said, climbing down from the lead wagon. Martha Kincaid had been beautiful once. Now she just looked worn thin, like cloth washed too many times. "Samuel and Jacob can lift and if they throw their backs doing it?" Thomas stood. "Then I've got 2 sons who can't work, and a daughter who can't walk, and we're all dead before we reach the valley." "She's your daughter." Martha's voice cracked. "I'm aware." Thomas looked down at Mara again. She tried to read something in his face. Regret, maybe, or sorrow. But there was only that cold assessment, the same look he gave a lame mule or a wagon with a cracked wheel. "Mara, listen to me." She couldn't feel her legs anymore. The numbness was spreading, which should have been a relief, but somehow made everything worse. "The pass ahead narrows," he said. "Storm's getting worse. If we don't make the descent before dark, we'll have to camp exposed, and none of us will see morning. That's not speculation, that's fact. So fix the wagon." Her voice sounded strange, distant. "Can't be done. Not in time." He glanced back at the other wagons, at the faces watching, at his wife, his sons, the 3 hired men who'd signed on in independence, looking for a new start in Oregon territory. "I have to think of them. I'm them." Mara's chest felt tight. "I'm your daughter. I'm part of— I have 2 other children who can still walk. A wife. Men who trusted me to get them through." His jaw worked. "You want me to risk all of them for—" He didn't finish. He didn't have to. "For me," Mara said quietly. "You can't risk them for me." The silence that followed was worse than the wind. Martha made a sound like something breaking. Jacob took a step forward, but Samuel, older, harder, grabbed his arm. "You son of a bitch," Jacob said. "You goddamn—" "Watch your mouth." Thomas's voice cracked like a whip. And get back in the wagon, now. Papa, please. It was the last card Mara had to play, the last thread of hope. I'll try to crawl, I can follow the trail, I can catch up, just don't. You'll be dead in an hour. He said it without inflection, like he was commenting on the weather. Legs are crushed. Even if you could move, you'd bleed out or freeze before you made it 100 yards. He reached into his coat and pulled out his revolver. Mara's breath stopped. Jesus Christ, Thomas. Martha grabbed his arm. What are you being merciful? He checked the cylinder, snow-dusting the blued steel. Quick is better than slow. No. The word tore out of Mara's throat. No, no, no. I won't let you suffer. He cocked the hammer. The click was very loud despite the wind. Mara couldn't move, couldn't think, couldn't do anything but stare at the black eye of the barrel swinging toward her face. This was her father, the man who'd taught her to ride, who'd let her help with the horses even though her mother said it wasn't proper, who'd promised her that Oregon would be different, better, a place where she could, I'll take her. Everyone turned. The voice came from near the third wagon, where the hired men stood. Michael Chen stepped forward, his hat pulled low against the wind. He was the youngest of them, maybe 25, with a quiet way of moving that always made Mara think of water flowing around rocks. Hell you will, Thomas said. You're going to shoot her or leave her to freeze. Chen's English carried the careful precision of someone who'd learned it as a second language. I'm offering a third option. Which is? I stay. I get her out. I take my chances getting her down the mountain. Thomas laughed, but there was no humor in it. You'll both die. Maybe. Chen shrugged. But that's my choice to make, isn't it? You hired me to help get the wagons through. Didn't say I couldn't quit. Middle of nowhere, middle of a storm. Thomas lowered the gun slightly. That's suicide. So is what you're about to do. The two men stared at each other. Mara's heart was hammering so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. Her mother had both hands pressed to her mouth. Jacob looked like he might cry or throw a punch or both. She'll slow you down, Thomas said finally. Probably kill you both. I'll take that risk. Why? The word came out sharp, suspicious. What's she to you? Chen's jaw tightened. Does it matter? Might. She's a person. Chen's voice stayed level, but something cold moved behind his eyes. That's enough. Thomas studied him for a long moment. Then he holstered the revolver and turned to Mara. Your choice, girl. Quick and painless now, or slow and hard with him. What's it going to be? Mara couldn't speak. Her throat had closed up entirely. She looked at Chen, this man she barely knew, who was offering to die with her for no reason she could understand. I'll stay, she whispered. You sure? Thomas asked. Because once we leave, I'm sure. Her father nodded once. Martha, say goodbye. Her mother rushed forward and dropped to her knees in the snow, reaching for Mara's face with shaking hands. Baby, I'm so sorry. I tried to. He wouldn't listen. I tried. It's okay, Mama. The lie tasted like copper. It's okay. We'll send help. Martha was crying now, tears freezing on her cheeks. Once we get to the valley, we'll send someone back, I promise. Martha. Thomas's hand on her shoulder. Time to go. Please. Martha gripped Mara's hands. Please forgive me. Please. I forgive you. Another lie. Mara didn't know if she meant it or if she ever would, but her mother needed to hear it. Go. Keep Jacob and Samuel safe. Jacob broke away from Samuel and ran to her, dropping down on his other side. I'll come back, he said fiercely. I swear to you, Mara, I'll come back and find you and you'll get in that wagon. Thomas's voice. Now. Samuel had to physically drag Jacob away. Her brother fought him, screaming things Mara couldn't make out over the wind. Martha let herself be pulled to her feet, still crying, still reaching back. Thomas stood over Mara one last time. For what it's worth, he said quietly, this isn't what I wanted. Then don't do it. Already done. He looked at Chen. I'm leaving you one of the spare tarps and some tinned goods. That's all I can spare. Generous, Chen said flatly. Practical. Thomas started walking toward the lead wagon, then paused. Without looking back, he said, She's got a stubborn streak, doesn't know when to quit. Might give you trouble. I'll manage. See that you do. Then he climbed up onto the wagon seat, took the reins, and spoke to the horses. The wagon lurched forward. The others followed. Mara watched them disappear into the white curtain of snow, the sound of wheels and hooves fading until there was nothing but the wind. She was alone. No, not alone. Chen was moving toward the pinned wagon, his face set. Don't, Mara said. Don't waste your time. He's right. I'm dead either way. Chen ignored her. He braced his shoulder under the wagon's edge and heaved. The frame creaked but didn't budge. You're going to break your back, Mara said. She couldn't feel anything below her waist now, probably a bad sign. Just leave me the gun and go. You can still catch up with them. Not interested. He repositioned, found better leverage, and tried again. This time the wagon shifted an inch, then two. Why are you doing this? Mara asked. You don't even know me. Know enough. Another heave. The wagon rose another few inches. Know your father's a coward who values horses more than his own daughter. Know your mother's too scared to stand up to him. Know your brothers wanted to help but didn't have the spine. That's not... Mara stopped. Because it was true. All of it. They had to think of themselves. They had to think of the group. Not the same thing. Chen wedged a rock under the raised edge, then moved to try lifting from another angle. Survival isn't pretty. Sometimes it's choosing who lives and who doesn't, but there's a difference between hard choices and being a coward. Your father crossed that line. And you're brave? Mara couldn't keep the bitterness out of her voice. Or just stupid. Maybe both. He strained against the weight, muscles standing out in his neck. Ask me again if we live through this. The wagon rose higher. Mara felt the pressure on her legs shift, and suddenly the numbness gave way to pain so fierce she bit through her lip. Blood, hot and copper, filled her mouth. Almost, Chen grunted. When I say go, you pull yourself out. Understand? She couldn't answer. The pain had stolen her voice. Mara. His voice cut through the red haze. I need you to fight, just for another minute. Can you do that? Could she? She didn't know. Her legs were crushed. Her father had left her to die. The cold was seeping into her bones, making her thoughts slow and heavy. It would be so easy to just stop, to let go, to sleep. Mara. Yes, she gasped. Yes, I can fight. Good. On 3. 1. The wagon shifted. 2. Higher. 3. Now! Mara dug her fingers into the snow and pulled. Her legs screamed. Something grated and tore, and for a horrible moment she thought she'd left part of herself behind. But then she was clear, and Chen let the wagon drop with a thunderous crash that shook the ground. He was beside her immediately, hands moving over her legs with surprising gentleness. Can you feel this? Yes. She wanted to scream. Yes, I can feel it. Good. Means the spine's intact. He pulled off his coat and wrapped it around her. Bad news is both legs are broken. Probably other things too. You're bleeding somewhere I can't see. So I'm dying. Not if I can help it. He scooped her up like she weighed nothing. The movement sent fresh waves of agony through her, and this time she did scream. Sorry, he said. Going to get worse before it gets better. He started walking, carrying her into the storm. Mara tried to focus on his face, on the set of his jaw, on anything that wasn't the pain, but the world was starting to gray at the edges. Stay with me, Chen said. Talk to me. Tell me about Oregon. What were you going to do when you got there? I can't. Yes, you can. Come on. What was the plan? Farm, she managed. Papa was going to claim land, build a house. And you? What did you want? Wanted to... The words were getting harder to find. To learn to read properly, not just the Bible, real books. Good goal. His voice seemed to be coming from very far away. We'll get you those books. I promise. You can't promise that. Watch me. The world tilted. Mara realized she was slipping, falling into a darkness that felt warm and inviting. She could hear Chen's voice calling her back, but it was getting easier to ignore. Then he stopped walking. Through the haze, Mara saw why. A cabin stood ahead, almost invisible against the white landscape. Small, rough-built, with smoke rising from a stone chimney. In front of it stood a man. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a thick dark beard and eyes that reflected the snowlight like a wolf's. He held a rifle across his chest, and he did not look happy to have company. "Turn around," the man said. His voice was deep, rough from disuse. "Nothing for you here." "Need shelter," Chen said. "She's hurt bad. Dying, probably." "Not my problem." "Making it your problem." Chen's arms tightened around Mara. "I'm coming in. You can shoot me or you can help. Either way, I'm getting her out of this cold." The man with the rifle didn't move. His eyes tracked from Chen to Mara and back again. Mara tried to focus on his face, tried to read whether he was the kind of man who'd pull the trigger. "Please," she whispered. The word cost her the last of her strength. Something changed in the man's expression. Just for a moment. Just a flicker. Then he lowered the rifle and stepped aside. "Inside," he said. "Quick." Chen moved past him into the cabin's warmth. Mara caught a glimpse of rough wooden walls, a fireplace, a narrow bed, before Chen laid her down on something soft. Furs, maybe. Everything was spinning now. "What happened?" the bearded man asked. "Wagon accident. Caravan left her." "Left her?" A pause. "Christ. How long ago?" "Hour. Maybe 2. In this cold." Another pause. "She should be dead already." "She's stubborn." "Stubbornness won't save her. Look at her legs." Mara tried to see what they were seeing, but her vision was blurring. She could hear them talking. Something about infection, about amputation, about how much blood she'd lost. But the words didn't seem important anymore. She'd been left behind, abandoned, chosen against. That was the truth of it, the thing she'd always feared. When it came down to it, when survival meant choosing, she was the one who got left in the snow. Her father had taught her that. The darkness rushed up to meet her, and this time she didn't fight it. The last thing she heard was the bearded man's voice, rough and reluctant. "Get the whiskey, and find something she can bite down on. This is going to hurt like hell." Boom. Bum. When Mara woke, she was surprised to be waking at all. The first thing she noticed was warmth. Real warmth. The kind that sank into your bones and made you remember what it felt like to not be cold. The second thing was pain, a deep, grinding ache in her legs that made her gasp. Easy. A hand on her shoulder, pressing her back down. "Don't try to move." The voice belonged to the bearded man. Ronan, Chen had called him, or maybe she dreamed that. Her thoughts were still fuzzy, like she was thinking through water. "Where?" Her throat felt like sandpaper. "My cabin, 3 miles northeast of where Chen found you." Ronan moved away, and she heard the sound of water being poured. He returned with a cup pressed to her lips. "Slow, just a sip." The water was cold and clean and tasted like the best thing she'd ever drunk. She tried to take more, but he pulled the cup back. "Too much too fast and you'll be sick. Give it a minute." Mara let her head fall back against the pillow. Not a pillow, actually. A bundled-up coat. She looked around the cabin, taking it in properly now. One room, maybe 20 feet square. A fireplace on one wall with a crude mantel holding a few tin cups and plates. A table with 2 chairs, shelves lined with supplies, tinned goods, ammunition, tools, furs and skins hanging from the rafters, a rifle mounted above the door, and another leaning in the corner. "Chen?" she asked. "Outside, checking the traps." Ronan sat down in one of the chairs, studying her with those wolf-light eyes. "You've been out for 2 days." 2. Her chest tightened. "My legs. Broken. Both of them. Set them as best I could, but I'm no doctor. They'll probably heal crooked. Probably. If they heal at all, infection's the bigger worry. You've got frostbite on your toes and fingers, lost the tip of your left ear to it. Mara reached up automatically and felt the bandage. Beneath it, where her ear should have curved, there was nothing. Could have been worse, Ronan said. Could have lost the whole ear, could have lost your feet, could have died. Maybe I should have. The words came out flat, and she meant them. What good was surviving if she was going to be crippled? If she couldn't work, couldn't walk, couldn't do anything but be a burden? Ronan's expression didn't change. That's self-pity talking, or you really believe that? Does it matter? Might. He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. Chen seems to think you're worth saving, risked his life to get you here. If you're just going to give up and die anyway, I should probably tell him so he can stop wasting supplies on you. Anger flickered in her chest, weak, but there. I didn't ask him to save me. No. But he did it anyway, and now you're here, in my cabin, eating my food and using my medical supplies, so you've got a choice to make. What choice? Fight or quit? He said it simply, like he was discussing the weather. You want to die? I'll make it quick and painless. Won't judge you for it. But if you want to live, then you damn well better start acting like it. Mara stared at him. You'd kill me? Just like that? Rather that than watch you waste away because you've decided you're not worth the effort. He stood and moved to the fireplace, adding another log. Life out here is hard enough without carrying dead weight. I'm not. She stopped, because maybe she was. Maybe that's exactly what she'd become. Your father thought you were, Ronan said, his back still to her. Left you to die because you'd become a problem, a burden, something weighing down the people who mattered. You don't know anything about my father. Know enough. He turned to face her. Know he's a coward and a fool, but that doesn't make him wrong about everything. What's that supposed to mean? Means you have to decide if he was right about you. Ronan moved closer, and she could see the scars on his hands, the old marks of a life lived rough. Are you dead weight? Are you someone who'll curl up and wait to die the moment things get hard? Or are you someone who'll fight? My legs are broken. And I can't walk, can't work, can't or won't. He crouched down beside the bed so they were eye level. You've got working hands, a working mind, a mouth that clearly functions just fine. You might not be able to run, but there's a lot of living you can do without running. Why do you care? The question came out sharper than she intended. You didn't want us here. You said this wasn't your problem. Something flickered across Ronan's face, something old and dark and painful. You're right. It's not my problem. I've got enough of my own. Then why? Because I'm tired of watching people die. The words came out rough, scraped raw. Tired of being alone with nothing but ghosts and regrets. Chen showed up at my door with a dying girl in his arms, and I had a choice. Same choice your father had, and I'll be damned if I make the same one he did. They stared at each other in the firelight. Outside, the wind howled against the cabin walls. I don't want to die, Mara whispered finally. Then don't. But I don't know how to... You learn. He stood. Same as everything else. One day at a time. One step at a time. Even if those steps are crawling on your hands and knees at first. The door opened, letting in a blast of cold air. Chen stamped snow off his boots, a pair of dead rabbits dangling from his hand. He took one look at Mara's face and smiled. You're awake, he said. Good. Was starting to worry. She's awake and complaining, Ronan said. Which means she'll probably live. Complaining is a good sign. Chen hung the rabbits from a hook and moved to the fireplace to warm his hands. Means she's got fight left. Does she? Ronan looked at Mara again. That's what we're trying to figure out. Mara wanted to snap back, to tell them both to go to hell. To... What? Crawl out into the snow and die anyway? Prove her father right? I'll fight, she said instead. I'll earn my keep, somehow. Don't need you to earn anything, Ronan said. Just need you to not give up. Same thing, isn't it? No. He moved to the door, pulling on his heavy coat. Earning implies debt. You don't owe me anything. but you owe yourself the chance to become something more than your father's discarded trash." He left before she could respond, the door slamming behind him. Chen watched him go, then looked at Mara. "He's not good with people." "I noticed. Lost his family 5 years back, wife and daughter. Fever took them both in the same week." Chen's voice was quiet. "Been alone up here ever since. I don't think he's spoken more than 10 words to another human being in all that time." Mara felt something twist in her chest. "Why'd he let us stay then?" "You heard him, tired of watching people die." Chen pulled up the other chair and sat down. "How are you feeling? Truth." "Like I got crushed under a wagon and left to die in a blizzard." "Fair." He reached for her hand, checking her pulse. His fingers were warm despite having just come in from the cold. "Pain's a good sign, means your body's still fighting." "Feels like it's fighting me." "It is. That's how healing works. Everything fights everything until things settle." He released her hand and sat back. "You're going to have a rough few weeks, maybe months. The breaks will heal, but you'll probably walk with a limp for the rest of your life. The frostbite might get worse before it gets better. And the fever." "What fever?" "The one that'll probably hit you tomorrow or the next day. Happens with injuries like this. Body's way of trying to fight off infection." "And if I can't fight it off?" Chen met her eyes. "Then we bury you when the ground thaws." The bluntness should have scared her. Instead, it was almost comforting. No false hope, no lies, just the truth, laid out clean. "How long are you staying?" she asked. "Long as it takes." "And then?" "Then I'll head west, maybe California, maybe Oregon, haven't decided yet." He shrugged. "But that's not today's problem. Today's problem is keeping you alive." "Why?" The question that had been burning in her since the moment he'd volunteered to stay. "Why risk your life for mine? You don't know me, don't owe me anything." Chen was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight she hadn't heard before. "Had a sister once, younger than me. Father decided she was too much trouble, too many mouths to feed. Sold her to a merchant when she was 12. Mara's breath caught. "I didn't fight for her," Chen continued. "Was too young, too scared of what my father would do if I spoke up. Told myself there was nothing I could do, that it was his choice, not mine." His jaw tightened. "Found out later the merchant worked her to death in his house within 2 years. Chen, I can't save my sister. She's gone. But when I saw you under that wagon, saw your father standing there deciding you weren't worth the trouble." He looked at her, and his eyes were bright. "Maybe I can't change the past, but I can damn sure change this moment." Mara didn't know what to say. The air between them felt heavy with things neither of them could name. "Rest," Chen said finally, standing. "I'll make something to eat. You need to get your strength back." He moved to the fireplace and began preparing the rabbits, his movements practiced and efficient. Mara watched him work, her mind churning. She'd been abandoned, left to die, chosen against. But then 2 men, strangers, both of them, had chosen differently. Chen had risked his life. Ronan had opened his door. And now here she was, alive despite everything, in a cabin that smelled like wood smoke and drying furs, with 2 men who'd decided she was worth saving even when her own father hadn't. She didn't know what to do with that, didn't know how to carry the weight of it. Outside, the storm was finally breaking. Through the cabin's single window, Mara could see patches of sky, dark blue and star-bright. The wind had died to a whisper. Somewhere out there, her family was probably camped in the valley, warm and safe, already forgetting she'd ever existed. And here she was, broken and scarred and alive. The door opened again. Ronan stamped inside, carrying an armload of firewood. He glanced at Mara, then at Chen, then began stacking the wood beside the hearth. "Storm's passing," he said. "Be clear by morning." "Good," Chen said. "Maybe we can start hunting properly. Supplies won't last forever." "Supplies will last long enough." Ronan's tone didn't invite argument. Mara cleared her throat. Both men looked at her. "Thank you," she said. The words felt inadequate, too small for what they'd done, but they were all she had. Ronan grunted and went back to stacking wood. Chen smiled. "You're welcome." "I mean it," Mara pressed. I know this is hard, having me here, but I'll help however I can. I'll learn. I'll work. I won't be dead weight. Already told you, Ronan said without looking up. Don't need you to earn anything. But I need to. The words came out fierce, surprising even herself. I need to prove that I was worth it, worth saving. Ronan did look up then, his expression unreadable. You don't prove worth. You just are, or you aren't. Then what am I? Don't know yet. He stood, brushing bark from his hands. But I guess we'll all find out together. That night, Mara lay awake listening to Chen's quiet breathing from his bedroll on the floor, and Ronan's almost silent presence in the corner. The fire had burned down to embers, painting the room in shades of orange and shadow. Her legs throbbed. Her missing ear felt like it was still there, phantom pain where flesh used to be. Every breath hurt, but she was alive. And tomorrow, she'd be alive again. And the day after that, however many days it took to become someone her father would have been a fool to leave behind. Outside, the mountain was silent and cold and waiting. Mara closed her eyes and waited too. The fever came on the third day, just like Chen said it would. Mara woke to find the cabin spinning, the rough wooden ceiling blurring into shapes that didn't make sense. Her skin felt like it was on fire, but she couldn't stop shivering. Someone was talking. Ronan's voice, low and urgent, but the words slid past her like water. Temperature's too high. Snow, we need more snow. Cool hands on her forehead, a wet cloth that felt like ice against her burning skin. She tried to push it away, but her arms wouldn't cooperate. Hold her down, Ronan said. She's going to win a fight. I've got her. Chen's voice. Chen's hands, gentle but firm on her shoulders. Mara tried to tell him she was fine, that they were worrying over nothing, but when she opened her mouth, only a croak came out. Then Ronan was pressing something cold against her legs, so cold it burned, and she did fight, thrashing against Chen's grip with strength she didn't know she had. Easy, Chen murmured. Easy, Mara. We're helping, just trying to bring the fever down. Hurts, she managed. I know, but if we don't cool you down, you're going to cook from the inside out. The world fractured into pieces after that. Sometimes she was in the cabin, watching firelight dance across the ceiling. Sometimes she was back under the wagon, her father's boots just out of reach, his voice saying over and over that she wasn't worth the risk. Sometimes she was somewhere else entirely, a place with green grass and warm sun, where her legs worked and her ear was whole, and nobody looked at her like she was something to be discarded. Voices drifted through the fever haze. Not getting better. Give her time. Don't have time. Infections spreading. Not cutting off her feet, Ronan. Rather, she lived with no feet than died with them. Mara wanted to tell them she agreed with Chen that she'd rather keep her feet even if it killed her, but the words got lost somewhere between her brain and her mouth. The fever broke on the 6th day. She woke to find the cabin blessedly still, the ceiling exactly where it was supposed to be. Her skin felt clammy and weak, but the fire under it had finally gone out. Chen sat in the chair beside her bed, his head tilted back against the wall, snoring softly. You're awake. Mara turned her head, slowly, carefully, to find Ronan at the table, cleaning his rifle. He didn't look up from his work. How long? Her voice came out like gravel. 6 days since the fever started, 9 since Chen dragged you here. 9 days? Over a week. Her family would be long gone by now, settled in the valley or already pushing further west. The thought should have hurt more than it did. Chen said you wanted to cut off my feet. Considered it. Ronan ran the cleaning rod down the barrel with practiced precision. Infection was spreading. Thought we might lose you either way, but at least without the feet you'd have had a chance. And now? Now the fever's broken and the infection stopped spreading. Looks like you get to keep your toes. He glanced up, meeting her eyes. Most of them, anyway. Mara looked down at her feet, visible under the thin blanket. Both were bandaged, but she could see the blackened edges of frostbite on what remained of her smallest toes. She wiggled what she could. Pain shot through her, but everything moved. Could be worse, she said. Could always be worse. Ronan went back to his rifle. Question is whether you're going to make it better. How do I do that? By getting up. Mara stared at him. My legs are broken. And they're going to stay weak if you don't use them. Chen's been too soft, letting you lie there like an invalid. He set down the rifle and stood. Time to see if those bones set right. I don't think... Didn't ask what you think. He moved to the bed and pulled back the blanket. Arms up. What are you... Going to get you on your feet. Now arms up, or I'll haul you up without your cooperation. There was no give in his voice. Mara raised her arms, and Ronan slid his hands under her shoulders, lifting her to sitting in one smooth motion. The world tilted sickeningly. Breathe, Ronan ordered. Head between your knees if you need to. She didn't need to, but it was close. After a moment, the cabin stopped spinning. Good. Now we stand. I can't. You can. Bones are healed enough. Just need to convince your body of that. He positioned himself in front of her, hands extended. On 3, 1, 2, 3. Mara gripped his hands and pulled. Pain exploded through her legs as she tried to put weight on them. Her knees buckled immediately, but Ronan caught her, holding her upright. There, he said. You're standing. I'm falling. Same thing at first. He adjusted his grip, taking more of her weight. Now, left foot forward, small step. Are you insane? Probably. Step. Mara wanted to argue, to tell him this was too much too soon, but something in his face stopped her. This wasn't cruelty. This was something else, something that looked almost like understanding. She moved her left foot forward. It dragged more than stepped, and the pain made her gasp, but it moved. Good. Now the right. The right foot was worse. The break had been cleaner in the left leg, Chen had said. The right had shattered in 3 places. Moving it felt like grinding glass in her bones. Can't, she gasped. Can. You just did it with the left. Right's no different. It hurts. Everything hurts. Hurt means you're alive. His hand stayed steady on hers. Right foot, now. She moved it. Barely an inch, but it moved. Again. Ronan. Again. Left foot, left, right. Each step a new lesson in pain. By the 5th step, Mara was crying. By the 10th, she was shaking so hard she could barely stand. But Ronan didn't let go, didn't let her stop, didn't let her collapse back onto the bed until they'd made it to the fireplace and back. When he finally lowered her down, she was soaked in sweat and trembling like a leaf. You son of a bitch, she panted. Probably. He handed her a cup of water. But you walked. You call that walking? I call it a start. He moved back to the table and his rifle. We'll do it again tomorrow and the day after, every day until you can make it across the room without crying. And then? Then we teach you to do it without me holding you up. The door opened and Chen came in carrying a string of fish. He took one look at Mara's face and frowned. What did you do? Got her on her feet, Ronan said. She's barely over the fever. Her legs aren't ready for... Her legs are fine. It's her head that's the problem. Ronan picked up his rifle and headed for the door. Going to check the traps. Back before dark. He left. Chen stared after him, then turned to Mara. Did he hurt you? No. Mara wiped her face with the back of her hand. He made me walk. Walk? Already? Chen set down the fish and moved to examine her legs. Let me see. If he damaged, he didn't damage anything. Mara pulled her legs back, surprised by her own defensiveness. It hurt like hell, but he was right. I can stand. I can move. Chen sat back on his heels, studying her. You sure you're okay? No, but I'm better than I was yesterday. She met his eyes. He's trying to help, in his own terrible way. Ronan doesn't know how to help without making it hurt. Maybe that's the only kind of help that works out here. Chen didn't have an answer for that. He went back to the fish, scaling them in silence while Mara caught her breath. Her legs throbbed, worse than they had in days. But underneath the pain was something new. something that felt almost like strength. That night she ate fish and hard bread at the table instead of in bed. It took all three of them to get her into the chair, and she nearly passed out twice, but she did it. Ronan didn't comment, just passed her the salt like it was the most normal thing in the world. The days that followed fell into a rhythm. Morning. Ronan hauled her out of bed and made her walk, pushing her a little further each time. Afternoon, Chen changed her bandages and cooked meals and told her stories about San Francisco, where he'd lived before heading east. Evening. All three of them sat by the fire, not talking much, but together. It wasn't comfortable. Ronan was rough and demanding, never satisfied with her progress. Chen fussed over her like a mother hen, constantly checking for signs of infection or fever. And Mara herself was angry more often than not, at her weakness, at her father, at the unfairness of everything that had brought her to this tiny cabin in the middle of nowhere. But she was getting stronger. 2 weeks after the fever broke, she made it across the cabin without Ronan's support. 3 weeks, and she could stand for 10 minutes without needing to sit. A month, and she was helping Chen prepare meals, her hands steady enough to peel potatoes and gut fish. Her legs still hurt. Probably always would, Ronan said. The right one had healed crooked, leaving her with a pronounced limp. But she could walk, she could stand, she could work. Not bad for a girl who was supposed to die, Chen said one afternoon, watching her chop vegetables. Not great for one who's supposed to earn her keep, Mara replied. You are earning it. Look around. He gestured at the cabin. Cleaner than it's been in 5 years, and the cooking's actually edible now. Ronan's cooking wasn't that bad. Ronan's cooking was designed to keep a man alive, not make him happy about it. Chen grinned. Trust me, this is an improvement. The door opened, bringing with it a blast of cold air, and Ronan himself, carrying what looked like half a deer on his shoulders. He dumped it on the table with a heavy thud. Found this in the lower trap, he said. Something killed it. Cougar, probably. Recently? Chen asked. Within the hour, Cat might still be around. Ronan pulled his knife and began field dressing the carcass. Going to need to move the traps further out, getting too much competition in the near territory. Or the competition needs to be dealt with, Chen said quietly. Ronan's hands paused. You offering? If it comes to it. Might. Ronan went back to his work, blood slicking his hands. Cougar gets a taste for easy prey, starts hanging around the cabin, we'll have a problem. Mara watched them. These two men who'd fallen into partnership so easily. They didn't always agree. She'd heard them argue about everything from trap placement to the best way to cure meat, but there was a rhythm to their disagreements, a trust. How long are you planning to stay? She asked Chen. The question had been building for weeks. He didn't answer right away, just stood there, staring at the deer carcass like it held answers. Haven't decided, he said finally. You said you were heading west. I was. Maybe still am. He looked at Ronan. Depends. On what? Mara pressed. On whether you two need me. Don't need anyone, Ronan said flatly. Never have. Everyone needs someone, Chen replied, even stubborn mountain men who pretend they don't. Ronan's jaw tightened, but he didn't argue, just finished butchering the deer in silence. That night, Mara lay awake listening to the wind howl against the cabin walls. Spring was coming, Chen said. Another few weeks and the snow would start to melt, the passes would open, and travel would be possible again. Chen would leave. She was certain of it. He'd done what he set out to do, saved her, got her back on her feet. There was nothing keeping him here except guilt and a sense of obligation, and those would wear thin soon enough. And then it would be just her and Ronan. The thought should have terrified her. Ronan was hard and closed off, a man who spoke in grunts and measured his words like gold. He'd made it clear from the beginning that he didn't want company, didn't need it, didn't know what to do with it. But he'd taught her to walk again, had pushed her when she wanted to quit, had never once looked at her like she was broken. Can't sleep? Mara startled. Ronan's voice came from the darkness near the fireplace. Didn't know you were awake, she said. Don't sleep much. A pause. Wind keeps me up. Just the wind? Another pause, longer this time. Among other things. Mara pushed herself up on one elbow. She could see his silhouette against the dying fire, sitting in his chair, rifle across his knees like always. Chen's going to leave, she said. I know. What happens then? Same thing that happens now. We survive. We? You're here, aren't you? He shifted in his chair. Unless you're planning on leaving too. Where would I go? Oregon. Catch up with your family. He said it without inflection, but something in the words felt like a test. They're not my family anymore. The truth of it settled in her chest, heavy but not unwelcome. They left me to die. That's not something you come back from. No, Ronan agreed. It's not. So I'm here, for better or worse. Might be worse. Winter's ending, but that doesn't make this place easy. Supplies run low, weather turns mean, and we're not the only things living on this mountain. The cougar. And worse. He stood, moving to the window. Had trappers come through last fall, 3 of them, armed and looking for trouble, tried to run me off my own land. What happened? They left. His tone suggested they hadn't left willingly, but they might come back. And if they do, if they see you here. I'm a weakness, Mara finished. You're a woman alone with one man in the middle of nowhere. They'll see opportunity. He turned to face her. I can handle 3 men if I have to, but I can't protect you and defend the cabin at the same time. Then don't protect me. Ronan raised an eyebrow. Teach me to protect myself, Mara said. I can walk now. I can work. Teach me to fight. You can barely stand for more than an hour. So teach me to fight sitting down. She met his eyes. You said I needed to prove I could pull my weight. Let me. He studied her in the firelight, and she couldn't read his expression. Then he moved to the wall and took down a smaller rifle, one she hadn't seen before. This was my daughter's, he said quietly. She was 10 when she died. Never got to use it. He held it out. It's light, won't kick as hard as mine. Mara took it, feeling the weight of it, the smooth wood of the stock. You're really going to teach me? Going to try. Whether you learn is up to you. He sat back down, his own rifle in hand. Rule 1. Never point it at anything you don't plan to kill. What's Rule 2? If you point it at something, you better damn well kill it. Hesitation gets you killed. Mara ran her hand along the barrel. What if I can't? Kill someone, I mean. Then you'll die and probably take me with you. No judgment in his voice, just fact. Out here, mercy is a luxury. You either fight or you fold. There's no middle ground. That's a bleak way to live. It's the only way that works. He leaned back. But if you can't handle that, better you know now. Could she kill someone? Mara didn't know. She'd never been violent, never even been in a real fight. But she thought about her father's face in the storm, the cold calculation in his eyes as he decided she wasn't worth saving. She thought about the men Ronan described, looking at her and seeing weakness, opportunity. I can handle it, she said. We'll see. The next morning, Ronan started her training. Not with the rifle, that would come later, he said, but with her hands. How to make a proper fist. Where to hit to do the most damage. How to use her weight, even with bad legs. You're never going to overpower a full-grown man, he said, demonstrating a strike to the throat. But you don't need to overpower. You just need to hurt enough to make them think twice. Chen watched from the table, his expression unreadable. You disapprove? Ronan asked him. I think there are better ways to spend time than teaching a woman how to kill. Name one. Chen didn't have an answer, but that night, while Ronan was outside, he pulled Mara aside. Are you sure about this? He asked. Learning to fight, to shoot, it changes you. I'm already changed, Mara said. My father left me to die. I spent 6 days with fever so high I thought I'd burn up from the inside. I can't walk right anymore. I can't. She stopped, steadying herself. I can't go back to being who I was. That girl is dead. So I might as well become someone who can survive. Surviving isn't the same as living. Maybe not, but I'll take it over dying. Chen looked like he wanted to argue, but he didn't, just nodded and went back to his work. The weeks blurred together. Mara's hands toughened from gripping the rifle. Her legs grew stronger from the daily walks Ronan forced her on. Her aim improved from terrible to merely bad, then from bad to passable. "You'll never be a marksman," Ronan said one afternoon, watching her miss the target he'd set up by a solid 2 feet. "But at close range, you'll do." "How close?" "Close enough to see their face." He took the rifle from her and demonstrated, the shot cracking through the mountain air and punching through the center of the target. Close enough that missing means dying. Winter broke slowly, reluctantly. The snow began to recede, revealing bare earth and dead grass. Ice melted from the eaves. The wind lost its killing edge, and men came. Mara saw them first. She'd been outside fetching water from the creek when movement on the far ridge caught her eye. 3 figures picking their way down the slope toward the cabin. She dropped the bucket and ran, limped as fast as she could, back inside. "Ronan, Chen, we've got company." Both men were on their feet immediately. Ronan grabbed his rifle and moved to the window. Chen positioned himself by the door. "Same ones from last fall," Ronan said quietly. "I recognize the one in front." "What do they want?" Mara asked. "Nothing good." He checked his rifle's load. "Chen, take Mara and—" "No." Mara grabbed her own rifle from where it leaned against the wall. "I'm not hiding. You can barely walk. I can shoot well enough." She moved to the window on the other side of the door, legs protesting but holding. "You said I needed to fight." "Well, here's my chance." Ronan looked like he wanted to argue, but there wasn't time. The 3 men were within hailing distance now. The one in front, tall with a thick red beard and a scar across his cheek, raised his hand in greeting. "Voss," he called, "remember me?" Ronan opened the door and stepped out onto the porch, rifle held casually but ready. "I remember. I also remember telling you not to come back. And we stayed away, all winter, just like you wanted." The scarred man grinned. "But winter's over now. Figured it was time for a neighborly visit. We're not neighbors." "Close enough." The man's eyes drifted past Ronan to the cabin, and Mara knew the moment he spotted her at the window. His grin widened. "Well now, that's new. Didn't figure you for the type to keep company." "She's not company. She's a guest." "A guest?" The man exchanged glances with his companions. "Pretty guest. Looks young too. Where'd you find her?" "None of your business," Ronan said flatly. "Maybe not, but it makes me curious." He took a step closer. "See, we heard stories this winter. Talk about a caravan that lost somebody in the pass. A girl, they said, crushed under a wagon and left to die." Mara's heart hammered against her ribs. "That's a sad story," Ronan said, "but I don't see what it has to do with you. Just wondering if maybe that girl found her way here. If maybe you took her in. Another step. If maybe she's grateful enough to show her appreciation." The air went very still. "Turn around," Ronan said quietly. "Leave now, and we'll forget this conversation happened." "Can't do that." The scarred man shook his head. "Been a long winter. We're tired, we're hungry, and we're looking for hospitality, the kind a lone woman might provide." Ronan's rifle came up in one smooth motion. "Last chance." The scarred man laughed. "You gonna shoot all 3 of us before we rush you? I don't think so." "He doesn't have to shoot all 3. Chen's voice came from the side of the cabin, where he'd circled around without anyone noticing. His rifle was aimed at the scarred man's head. "Just has to shoot one," Chen continued, "and I'll take care of the others." The scarred man's smile faltered. "This isn't worth dying over." "Then leave," Ronan said. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then the scarred man spat in the dirt and backed away. "This isn't over," he said. "We'll be back. And next time we won't be asking nice." "Next time we won't be giving warnings," Ronan replied. The 3 men retreated up the ridge, shooting dark looks over their shoulders. Mara watched them go, her hands shaking so badly she had to set down the rifle before she dropped it. "They'll be back," Chen said, coming around to the front. I know. Ronan's jaw was tight. Soon, probably. How soon? Tonight, maybe tomorrow. They'll wait until they think we've relaxed, then they'll come hard and fast. Mara found her voice. Found her. What do we do? Ronan looked at her, and for the first time since she'd met him, she saw something like approval in his eyes. We get ready for war. They worked through the afternoon like people preparing for a siege, because that's exactly what it was. Ronan moved with the kind of efficiency that came from planning for violence long before it arrived. He dragged the heavy wooden shutters out from under the cabin. Mara hadn't even known they were there, and bolted them across the windows, leaving only thin gaps to see and shoot through. Chen checked their ammunition, counting rounds and organizing them into piles by the doors and windows. We've got maybe 60 rounds between us, Chen said. Enough for a sustained fight, but not enough to waste shots. Won't need to waste them, Ronan replied. He was at the table, loading his rifle with the kind of care most people reserved for something sacred. 3 men means 9 rounds if we're lucky. Twice that if they're smart enough to keep their heads down. Mara listened while trying to calm the hammering in her chest. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking, so she shoved them in her pockets where the men couldn't see. This morning she'd been fetching water. Now she was preparing to kill someone. What do I do? She asked, hating how small her voice sounded. Ronan looked up from his rifle. You stay away from the windows until shooting starts. When it does, you pick a target and you don't stop firing until he's down or you're out of ammunition. And if I miss, then reload and try again. He went back to his work, fingers moving with practiced precision. Fear makes people rush, makes them sloppy. You feel that panic rising. You take a breath and count to 3. Then you shoot. Easy for you to say. Never said it was easy, said it was necessary. He finished loading and set the rifle aside. You wanted to learn to fight. Well, here's your final exam. Chen pulled Mara aside while Ronan continued his preparations. You don't have to do this, he said quietly. You can hide in the root cellar. Let us handle it. And if you both die while I'm hiding, then you stay hidden until they leave. And then what? Live up here alone, waiting for them to come back and finish the job? Mara shook her head. I'm done hiding, done waiting for other people to decide whether I live or die. Brave words. Terrified words, she corrected, but I mean them anyway. Chen studied her face, and whatever he saw there made him nod slowly. All right, but you listen to Ronan. He's kept himself alive up here for 5 years. He knows what he's doing. What about you? How many fights have you been in? Enough. Something dark passed across Chen's face. More than I wanted, fewer than I probably deserved. Before Mara could ask what he meant, Ronan called them over to the table. He'd sketched out a rough map of the cabin and the surrounding area using charcoal on a piece of bark. They'll come from the ridge, he said, pointing to the eastern approach. Same way they came today. It's the easiest path down, and they don't know the mountain well enough to risk the other routes in the dark. You think they'll come at night? Chen asked. I would. Less chance of being seen from a distance, harder for us to aim. Ronan marked 3 X's on the map. They'll split up, one to draw fire from the front, while the other 2 circle around and try the back door or the windows. So we cover both entrances. And the windows, all of them. Ronan looked at Mara. That's where you come in. You're mobile enough to move between positions. Chen and I will hold the doors. You watch the windows. Call out if you see movement. What if they break through? They won't get the chance. Ronan's voice carried absolute certainty. We make this cabin a killing box. Anyone tries to come in, they don't come out. The sun sank lower, painting the snow-patched landscape in shades of orange and red. Mara found herself thinking about sunsets she'd seen before. From the wagon train, from her family's farm back east, from a dozen places that felt like they belonged to someone else's life. This might be her last one. The thought sat heavy in her stomach. Eat something, Chen said, pressing a piece of dried meat into her hand. Don't know when we'll get another chance. She tried to chew, but the meat tasted like dust. Her mouth was too dry, her throat too tight. She forced it down anyway, washing it with water that didn't help. First time's always the worst, right? Ronan said. He was sitting by the window, rifle across his knees, watching the ridge. Waiting, not knowing when it'll start. How many first times have you had? Mara asked. Enough to know it doesn't get easier, just more familiar. He glanced at her. You can still change your mind, hide in the cellar. No shame in it. You said mercy was a luxury. For them, not for you. He turned back to the window. You're not like me and Chen. Haven't killed anyone, haven't crossed that line. Once you do, there's no going back. You'll carry it with you every day for the rest of your life. Maybe. Mara moved to stand beside him, looking out at the dying light. But I'll be alive to carry it. Ronan was quiet for a moment. Then he said, My daughter would have been about your age now, 17, maybe 18. Mara had never heard him mention his daughter's age before, never heard him talk about her at all, except to say she'd died. What was her name? Sarah. The word came out rough, like it hurt to say. Sarah Voss. She was small for her age, stubborn as hell, used to argue with me about everything. Why she had to learn to shoot, why we couldn't get a dog, why the sky was blue. She sounds spirited. She was. His jaw worked. Fever took that spirit and burned it right out of her, watched her fade over 6 days, getting weaker and quieter until there was nothing left. He was quiet again. You remind me of her sometimes. The stubbornness, mostly. Mara didn't know what to say to that, so she just stood there beside him, watching the shadows lengthen across the mountain. Night came fast and complete, swallowing the landscape whole. Ronan lit a single candle and placed it on the table, just enough light to see by, but not enough to make them easy targets through the windows. The cabin felt smaller in the dark, the walls pressing in. They're coming, Chen said softly. How do you know? Mara asked. Feel it. He checked his rifle for the 3rd time. Air's wrong. Too quiet. He was right. The usual night sounds, wind in the trees, small animals moving through brush, had gone silent. Even the cabin seemed to be holding its breath. Ronan stood and moved to the front door, pressing his eye to the gap in the shuttered window. Chen, take the back. Mara, north window. Call out anything that moves. Mara positioned herself at the window, rifle braced against the sill. Her hands were steadier now. The waiting had burned through the worst of her fear, leaving something colder and harder behind. Through the narrow gap, she could see a slice of moonlit mountainside. Nothing moved. Then something did. A shadow, low and quick, darting between 2 rocks about 50 yards out. Then another, moving in the opposite direction. Movement, she called quietly. 2 of them, flanking from the north and west. I see the 3rd, Ronan said. Front approach, using the trees for cover. So it starts, Chen muttered. The shadow on the north side moved closer. Mara tracked it with her rifle, her finger hovering near the trigger. 30 yards. 20. Close enough now that she could make out a man's shape, hunched low, moving from tree to tree. North side's almost to the cabin, she said. Let him get closer, Ronan replied. Need to be sure of the shot. 10 yards. The man paused behind a fallen log, and Mara could see his face in the moonlight. Not the scarred man, one of the others, younger, with a patchy beard and eyes that kept darting toward the cabin. He looked scared. The realization hit Mara like cold water. He was just as frightened as she was. Maybe more. He didn't want to be here any more than she wanted him here, but circumstances had pushed them both into this moment, into this violence. For a second, she almost lowered the rifle. Then she remembered the way the scarred man had looked at her, the way he'd talked about hospitality and appreciation, the way her own father had looked at her in the snow, doing the math on her life. Her finger found the trigger. The man broke cover, running for the cabin wall. Mara tracked him, counted to 3 like Ronan taught her, and squeezed. The rifle kicked against her shoulder, the shot cracking through the night air. The man stumbled, grabbed his side, and went down hard. She'd hit him. She'd actually hit him. The thought barely had time to register before gunfire erupted from all sides. Ronan's rifle boomed from the front door. Chen's answered from the back. Mara ducked as return fire splintered the wood around her window. Stay down! Ronan shouted, but she couldn't stay down because the man she'd shot was getting back up, clutching his side but still moving, still coming. Mara fumbled with the rifle, trying to reload with shaking hands. Bullets punched through the shutters above her head. "North window!" she yelled. "He's still coming!" Ronan appeared beside her, shouldered her out of the way, and fired. The man dropped again, and this time he didn't get up. "Reload!" Ronan ordered, already moving back to his position. "Watch your sector." Mara's hands found the ammunition, loaded it without thinking, muscle memory from weeks of practice taking over where her brain had frozen. She brought the rifle back up just as someone hit the back door with enough force to crack the frame. Chen fired through the door, the sound deafening in the confined space. Someone screamed outside. The door shuddered again, but held. "They're trying to force the back," Chen called. "Let them try," Ronan replied. He fired again from the front, and Mara heard a curse from outside. "They want in. They can die trying." The scarred man's voice cut through the gunfire. "Voss, you can't hold out forever. We've got time and ammunition. You've got nothing but pride and a crippled whore." Mara felt the words like a physical blow. Crippled, whore. That's what she was to him. Not a person, not even a threat, just something to be taken. "Ignore him," Ronan said. "He's trying to make you angry, make you careless." But Mara was already angry, had been angry since her father left her in the snow, since her mother cried and did nothing, since Jacob got dragged away and Samuel just watched. The anger had been building for weeks, a pressure behind her ribs that had nowhere to go. Until now. She saw movement at the east window, the scarred man himself trying to pry the shutters loose. Without thinking, Mara swung her rifle toward him and fired. The bullet punched through the gap, and the scarred man jerked back with a startled yelp. "Got him," she said, surprised by how calm her voice sounded. "Got his arm, maybe," Ronan said. "Not enough to stop him." The scarred man proved him right by appearing at the south window seconds later, this time with a torch. He thrust it against the wooden shutters, trying to set them alight. "Fire!" Chen shouted. Ronan was already moving, grabbing the water bucket and throwing it through the gap. The torch hissed and went out, but not before the scarred man had pulled back to safety. "They're going to burn us out," Mara said. "Not if we kill them first," Ronan replied. He was reloading again, his movement steady despite the chaos. "Chen, how many rounds left?" 20, maybe 25. "Make them count." The attack shifted then, becoming less focused and more desperate. The raiders tried the windows, the doors, even the chimney. Chen fired up it and was rewarded with a scream and the sound of someone tumbling off the roof. But they kept coming, kept trying, driven by something Mara couldn't name. Greed, maybe. Or just the kind of stubborn meanness that wouldn't let them admit defeat. Mara's arms ached from holding the rifle. Her bad leg throbbed from standing too long. But she kept her position, kept watching, kept firing when targets presented themselves. She'd lost count of her shots, lost track of time. Everything had narrowed to the window, the rifle, the shadows outside that wanted her dead or worse. "They're pulling back," Chen said suddenly. He was right. The gunfire had stopped. The shadows were retreating up the ridge, moving fast and low. "Don't trust it," Ronan warned. "Could be a feint." They waited, rifles ready, watching for any sign of movement. Minutes passed, then more. The night sound slowly returned, wind, rustling leaves, the distant call of an owl. "I think they're really gone," Mara said. "For now." Ronan lowered his rifle, but didn't set it down. "They'll regroup, reassess, come back with a better plan or more men." "So what do? "We make sure they can't." He moved to the door and carefully lifted the bar. "Chen, cover me. I'm going out." "Bad idea," Chen said. "Only one we've got." Ronan eased the door open and slipped out into the darkness before Chen could argue further. Mara watched through the window as Ronan's shadow moved across the moonlit ground, checking each fallen body. At the first one, the man she'd shot, he crouched down for a moment, then moved on. At the second, he did the same. She couldn't see what he was doing, but when he came back inside 10 minutes later, his hands were bloody. "Two dead," he reported. "Third one got away, the scarred bastard." "You're sure?" Chen asked. Found blood trail heading up the ridge. Lots of it. He's hit bad, but he's mobile. Ronan moved to the basin and started washing his hands. The water turned pink, then red. He'll head for the nearest settlement, get help if he can. How long before he comes back with reinforcements? Week, maybe 2. Depends on how far he has to go and whether anyone believes his story. Mara set down her rifle, her legs finally giving out. She slid down the wall and sat on the floor, staring at nothing. I killed someone. The words hung in the air. You did, Ronan said. He didn't try to soften it, didn't tell her it was okay or that she'd had no choice, just stated it as fact. Does it get easier, she asked. No, but you get used to carrying it. Chen sat down beside her, his own hand shaking now that the fight was over. You did what you had to do, he said. They would have killed us, would have done worse to you. I know. And she did know. Understood it intellectually, rationally. But her hands were still stained with powder burn, and her ears were still ringing from gunfire, and somewhere outside was a man who'd been alive this morning and wasn't anymore because she'd pulled a trigger. First time I killed a man, I was 19, Chen said quietly. He was trying to rob the shop where I worked. Came at me with a knife, and I grabbed a cleaver from the counter and just swung, caught him in the neck. He stared at his hands. Bled out right there on the floor while I stood over him. I can still see his face sometimes when I close my eyes. Does it ever go away? Mara asked. No, but it becomes part of you, like any other scar. He looked at her. You'll be different now. Can't help that. But different doesn't mean broken. Ronan had finished cleaning his hands and was checking the cabin's defenses, testing the shutters and rebarring the doors. We need to move, he said abruptly. Both Chen and Mara looked at him. Move where? Chen asked. Away from here. This cabin's compromised. They know where we are, what our defenses look like. When that scarred bastard comes back, he'll bring enough men to overwhelm us. Ronan began gathering supplies, moving with purpose. We've got maybe 2 weeks, need to use them. To go where? Mara asked. We're in the middle of nowhere. Further into nowhere then. Higher up the mountain, where the trails are harder and the winter lasts longer. Place I know, old hunting camp. Easier to defend, harder to find. And supplies? Chen asked. We can barely feed 3 people here. How are we supposed to survive higher up? We hunt, we trap. Same as we do here, just with worse weather and less company. Ronan stopped his packing and looked at them. Or you both can head down to the valley, find civilization. Let me handle this alone. Alone, Chen repeated. Against how many men? However many come. That's suicide. Maybe, but it's my choice. Ronan's voice was hard. I'm not running anymore. Not from this mountain, not from men who think they can take what's mine. But I won't ask you to die with me. Mara pushed herself to her feet, her bad leg protesting. You're not asking. I'm choosing, same as before. You don't understand what you're choosing, Ronan said. Don't I? She met his eyes. My father left me to die rather than fight for me. You're asking me to walk away from the first people who've ever fought for me. You think I'm going to do that? The smart thing would be, I'm done being smart. Being smart got me crushed under a wagon. Mara's hands clenched into fists. I'm staying. I'm fighting. And if they come back with an army, then we'll deal with an army. Ronan looked like he wanted to argue, but Chen cut him off. She's right, Chen said. We stay together. We fight together. That's how we survive this. And if we don't survive? Ronan asked. Then at least we go down fighting, Chen replied. Better than dying alone. Something shifted in Ronan's expression, not quite agreement, but close enough. He nodded once and went back to packing. We leave at first light, take everything we can carry, burn the rest. Burn it? Mara asked. Leave nothing useful behind. They want this cabin. They can have the ashes. They worked through what remained of the night, sorting supplies into piles. Keep, burn, leave. Mara's body screamed for rest, but her mind wouldn't let her stop. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the man falling, saw the blood, saw her finger on the trigger. Different now, Chen had said. Different didn't mean broken. She hoped he was right. Dawn came gray and cold, with low clouds promising more snow. Ronan set fire to the cabin just as the sun broke the horizon. They stood watching it burn, 3 people with everything they owned on their backs, watching 5 years of shelter and safety go up in smoke. "You really did this," Chen said. "Burned your whole life down." "Already did that once when my family died," Ronan replied. "This is just wood and nails. The things that matter, I'm taking with me." He started walking without waiting for a response. Chen and Mara followed, leaving the burning cabin behind. The trail wound higher into the mountains, through snow that got deeper with every mile. Mara's leg ached, but she kept pace, driven by something she couldn't name. Pride, maybe. Or just stubbornness. They walked for hours, stopping only to catch their breath and check behind them. No pursuit yet, but Ronan kept them moving anyway. The landscape grew wilder, more desolate. Trees gave way to bare rock and patches of snow that never melted. The air thinned, making every breath an effort. "How much further?" Mara asked when they stopped for the 3rd time. "Another 2 miles, maybe 3. Ronan scanned the terrain behind them. "We'll make it before dark if we keep moving. And if they're already tracking us, then we'll know soon enough." He handed her a piece of dried meat. "Eat. You'll need the strength." The hunting camp turned out to be less a camp and more a cave with a lean-to built across its mouth. Rough, crude, and barely shelter at all. But it was defensible. One way in, one way out, and clear sight lines in every direction. "Home sweet home," Chen said without enthusiasm. They set up what passed for camp, building a fire in the cave's mouth and arranging their supplies in the back. It was cramped, cold, and miserable, but it was theirs. "We hold here," Ronan said, checking his rifle. "Wait for them to come. When they do, we make them regret it." "And if they don't come?" Mara asked. "They'll come." His voice carried absolute certainty. "Men like that don't forget. Don't forgive. They'll come looking for revenge, and when they do, we'll be ready." Mara looked out at the mountain, at the miles of wilderness stretching in every direction. She'd been abandoned once, left to die in the snow by people who should have saved her. But she'd survived that. Survived fever and broken bones and men with guns. She could survive this too. "Let them come," she said quietly. Ronan looked at her, and for the first time since she'd known him, he smiled. It was a hard smile, all edges and teeth, but it was real. "That's the spirit," he said. "Let them come." The waiting was worse than the fighting had been. Days bled into each other in the cramped cave, each one colder and grimmer than the last. They took turns on watch, scanning the approaches for any sign of movement. Ronan had been right about one thing. The position was defensible. Anyone coming up the trail would be exposed for the last quarter mile, visible long before they could reach the cave. But that didn't make the waiting easier. Mara found herself jumping at shadows, mistaking wind-blown snow for advancing figures. Her sleep was fractured when she could sleep at all, plagued by dreams of her father's face and the man she'd killed and the scarred raider's voice calling her a crippled whore. She'd wake with her heart hammering, reaching for the rifle before she was fully conscious. "You're going to wear yourself out," Chen said on the 5th morning. He was tending the fire, coaxing life from embers that wanted to die. "Need to save your strength for when they actually come." What if they don't come? The question had been eating at her. What if the scarred one died from his wounds? What if they decided we're not worth the trouble? "Then we've wasted a week freezing our asses off in a cave," Chen replied. "But I don't think that's what's going to happen." "Why not?" "Because men like that don't let things go. Pride matters more than sense." He looked at her across the fire. "They came to that cabin thinking they'd found easy prey. We killed 2 of them and sent the 3rd running. That's not something they can swallow and move on from." Ronan returned from his patrol, stomping snow from his boots. "Fresh tracks," he said. 2 miles down the trail. Maybe 6 men, moving slow. Scouting. 6? Mara's stomach dropped. "We barely handled 3. "We'll handle 6. Ronan checked his rifle, then started on his pistol. "Long as they're stupid enough to bunch up on the approach." "And if they're not stupid?" Chen asked. "Then we improvise." Ronan moved to the cave mouth and studied the trail. They'll come tomorrow. Maybe the day after. Weather's turning, see those clouds, storm coming in. They'll want to hit us before it arrives. He was right about the weather. By afternoon, the wind had picked up, carrying the smell of snow. By evening, the first flakes were falling, fat and heavy. Mara watched them accumulate on the rocks outside, each one erasing a little more of the world beyond their cave. "Tell me about San Francisco," she said to Chen, desperate for distraction. "You said you lived there." Chen looked surprised by the question, but after a moment he settled back against the cave wall. "Not much to tell. Worked in my uncle's shop, cutting meat and hauling supplies. Saved enough to buy passage east, thought I'd find something better." "And did you?" "Found different, not sure if it's better." He poked at the fire. "City was loud, crowded, always moving. People everywhere. All of them in a hurry to get somewhere. Used to drive me crazy, all that noise." "You miss it?" "Sometimes miss knowing where my next meal was coming from. Miss a real bed." He smiled slightly. "Miss not having people try to kill me on a regular basis." "You could go back," Mara said, "after this. Head west again. Find that life you left behind." "Could." Chen's smile faded. "But that life feels like it belonged to someone else now. Someone who hadn't killed anyone. Someone who hadn't watched a girl get left to die and decided to do something about it." Ronan had been quiet, but now he spoke. "That's the thing about violence. Changes the shape of you. Can't go back to fitting into spaces you occupied before." "Speaking from experience?" Chen asked. "Always." Ronan stared into the fire. "Had a farm once, down in the valley. Small place, but it was ours. Raised crops, kept chickens, lived quiet. Then the fever came and took my wife and daughter, and I couldn't stay there anymore. Every room reminded me of them. Every corner held ghosts." "So you came up here," Mara said. "Ran up here." His jaw tightened. "Told myself I was looking for solitude, for peace. Truth was I was running from anything that might make me feel something again." He looked at her. "Then Chen showed up with you, half dead and frozen, and suddenly I couldn't run anymore." "Why not?" "Because you were dying and I had a choice. Same choice a dozen people probably had when my Sarah was sick and nobody helped. Nobody came. Nobody cared enough to try." His voice cracked slightly. "I couldn't be one of those people. Couldn't look at you and walk away." The fire crackled in the silence that followed. Outside, the wind howled, driving snow against the rocks. "Thank you," Mara said quietly, "for not walking away." Ronan nodded once, then stood and moved to take first watch. Chen settled into sleep, wrapping himself in furs. Mara tried to do the same, but her mind wouldn't quiet. She kept thinking about the scarred man and his companions, somewhere out there in the storm, planning their attack. Kept thinking about the rifle in her hands and what she'd have to do with it. Different now. Different didn't mean broken. She repeated it like a prayer until sleep finally took her. The storm broke just before dawn, leaving the world buried under 2 feet of fresh snow. Ronan woke them while it was still dark. "They're coming," he said simply. "Saw movement on the lower trail. 8 of them, maybe more." "8?" Chen was on his feet immediately. "You said 6. "Picked up reinforcements somewhere, or I counted wrong." Ronan was already loading weapons, his movements calm and methodical. "Either way, we're outnumbered." "Fantastic," Chen muttered. He started checking ammunition. "We've got maybe 40 rounds left. That's 5 per man if there's 8 of them, assuming we don't miss." "We won't miss." Ronan handed Mara her rifle. "You remember what I taught you. Pick a target, count to 3, shoot." Her voice was steadier than she felt. "And if they rush us?" "Fall back into the cave. Make them come to us one at a time." "Good." He positioned himself at the cave mouth, using the lean-to for cover. "Chen, take the right side. Mara, left. Don't fire until I do. We need to make the first shots count." They took their positions. The sky was starting to lighten, turning the snow-covered landscape gray and ghostly. Mara could see the trail now, winding down through the rocks and scrub brush. Empty. Waiting. Then not empty. The first man appeared around a bend in the trail, moving carefully, rifle ready. Then another. Then three more. They spread out, keeping distance between them, using what cover they could find. Professional, Ronan muttered. Or at least experienced. This is going to be harder than I thought. The scarred man appeared last, his left arm in a crude sling. Even from a distance, Mara could see the hatred on his face. He pointed toward the cave, and his men began their advance. "Voss," the scarred man called. "You're surrounded. 8 of us, 3 of you. Give up the girl, and we'll let you live." "He's lying," Chen said quietly. "I know." Ronan sighted down his rifle. "But let's see if we can improve those odds before they get any closer." "How close?" Mara asked. "Close enough to make the shots matter, another 100 yards." The advancing men were taking their time, moving from cover to cover. Smart, cautious, not the kind of careless rush Mara had been hoping for. Her palms were sweating despite the cold. 80 yards, 70. The lead man had almost reached a cluster of boulders that would give him cover all the way to the cave entrance. "Now," Ronan said, and fired. The lead man dropped, clutching his chest. The others scattered, returning fire. Bullets pinged off the rocks around the cave mouth. Chen fired, missed, cursed, fired again. This time someone screamed. Mara found a target, a man trying to advance on their left flank. She counted to 3, feeling weirdly calm, and squeezed the trigger. The man stumbled, but kept moving. She fired again. This time he went down and stayed down. "Good shot!" Ronan yelled over the gunfire. He was working his rifle like a machine, firing and reloading in a smooth rhythm. Another attacker fell, but the others were still coming, using the terrain and their numbers to press forward. One made it to the boulders and started laying down covering fire. Another sprinted for a different position. They were coordinating, working together. "They're flanking us," Chen shouted. "Let them try." Ronan shifted position, tracking a man trying to circle right. He fired. The man fell, but 2 more were already moving to replace him. Mara's rifle clicked empty. She fumbled for ammunition, trying to reload while staying behind cover. A bullet struck the rock 6 inches from her head, showering her with stone chips. Her hands were shaking now, the calm from earlier evaporating. "Can't hold them!" Chen yelled. His face was bleeding from a graze, blood running down into his collar. "Too many." "Fall back!" Ronan fired 1 more shot, then grabbed Mara's arm and hauled her deeper into the cave. Chen followed, still shooting behind them. The cave narrowed as it went back, forcing any attackers to come single file. Ronan positioned himself at the choke point, rifle ready. "Here," he said. "This is where we make our stand." The attackers reached the cave mouth. Mara could hear them shouting to each other, coordinating. Then the scarred man's voice cut through. "Smoke them out, we've got all day." "They're going to block the entrance," Chen said. "Trap us in here." "No," Ronan replied. "They're going to try. But caves like this usually have backways. Air has to flow." "Usually?" Mara asked. "Usually." A shadow appeared at the entrance, one of the attackers trying to peer in. Ronan shot him without hesitation. The man fell back, screaming. Another tried, more cautious. Chen's rifle cracked, and the man retreated. But smoke was starting to drift into the cave. They'd lit something at the entrance, feeding it green wood to make it thick and choking. Mara's eyes began to water. "We can't stay here," she gasped. "Back," Ronan ordered. "All the way back. Find that airflow." They retreated deeper into the cave, the darkness closing around them. The smoke followed, not as thick here, but still present. Mara's lungs burned. She was coughing too hard to hold the rifle steady. Then she felt it, a whisper of cold air against her face, coming from somewhere to the left. "Here," she called. "There's air moving." Ronan was beside her immediately, running his hands along the cave wall. Gap in the rocks, narrow, but it might lead somewhere. He looked at Chen. "You're smallest. You try it first. And if it doesn't go anywhere, then we suffocate or surrender. Your choice." Chen didn't waste time arguing. He squeezed into the gap, grunting with effort. His voice came back muffled. "It opens up. I think there's a way out. Go." Ronan pushed Mara toward the gap. Follow him! The gap was barely wide enough for her shoulders. Mara had to turn sideways and push, the rough stones scraping her face and arms. For a horrible moment, she thought she was stuck, wedged between the rocks, with no way forward or back. Then she was through, tumbling into a larger space. Chen caught her, steadied her. There's light ahead. Come on! They stumbled forward through the darkness, guided by a faint gray glow. Behind them, Ronan squeezed through the gap, his larger frame making hard work of it. The smoke was thinner here, but Mara could still hear the attackers shouting at the cave entrance. The tunnel, because that's what it was, twisted and climbed. Mara's bad leg screamed with every step, but she didn't slow down. Couldn't slow down. The gray light grew brighter, and suddenly they were out, emerging from a crack in the rocks 50 yards above and behind the cave entrance. Below them, the attackers were focused on the cave mouth, feeding their fire and waiting for the smoke to do its work. They hadn't seen the escape. Now we have the high ground, Ronan said. He was already positioning himself behind a boulder, sighting down at the men below. And they're exposed. We're still outnumbered, Chen pointed out. Not for long. Ronan looked at Mara and Chen. On my mark, we hit them all at once. Aim for the ones closest to the fire. If we can scatter them, we break their courage. And if they don't scatter, then we killed a few more before they kill us. He settled the rifle against his shoulder. Ready? Mara took position, her rifle braced on the rock. She could see the scarred man clearly now, directing his men, pointing at the cave entrance. He looked confident, victorious. That was about to change. Mark, Ronan said, and fired. His bullet took the scarred man in the shoulder, spinning him around. Chen and Mara fired a heartbeat later, their shots kicking up dirt and rock around the startled attackers. One man fell, clutching his leg. Another dove for cover. The attackers scattered like Ronan predicted, abandoning the fire to find protection from this new threat. But there wasn't much cover on this side of the trail. They were caught in the open, exposed. Keep firing! Ronan worked his rifle like a man possessed. Don't give them time to think! Mara reloaded, fired, reloaded again. Her shoulder ached from the rifle's kick. Her ears rang from the constant gunfire. But she kept shooting because the alternative was dying, and she'd had enough of dying. One of the attackers tried to run back down the trail. Chen dropped him. Another tried to return fire, but Ronan's bullet found him first. The scarred man was screaming orders, but his men weren't listening anymore. They were breaking, running, desperate to escape the killing ground. Then hooves. Mara heard them before she saw them, the thunder of horses coming up the trail fast. Her first thought was reinforcements, more men come to kill them. But then she saw the riders, 3 of them, and they weren't shooting at the cave. They were shooting at the attackers. Who the hell? Chen started. Don't know, don't care, Ronan said. Just keep shooting while they're distracted. The riders swept through the attackers like a storm. One of them, a woman with gray hair and a rifle that never seemed to miss, took down 2 men in as many seconds. Another rider, broad-shouldered and bearded, used his horse to trample a third. The last rider, younger and faster, circled around to cut off the scarred man's retreat. In less than a minute, it was over. The surviving attackers, only 2 of them, threw down their weapons and raised their hands. The scarred man tried to run anyway, but the young rider roped him like a steer and dragged him back. The woman with gray hair dismounted and walked up to where Ronan, Chen, and Mara were climbing down from their position. She had hard eyes and a harder smile. Ronan Voss, she said. Been a long time. Martha Crane. Ronan lowered his rifle but didn't offer his hand. What are you doing up here? Heard you had trouble. Thought we'd check it out. She looked at the bodies scattered across the trail, then at Mara and Chen. Looks like we were right. We had it handled. Sure you did. Martha's smile widened. That why you were running out the back door of your cave while these bastards smoked you out? Ronan's jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. Martha turned her attention to Mara. You're the girl from the wagon train, the one they left behind. Wasn't a question. Mara nodded anyway. Heard about that? Word travels, even up here. Martha spat in the dirt. Your father's a coward and a fool. I know. Good, long as you know it. Martha looked at the surviving attackers who were being tied up by her companions. What do you want done with these? That's up to the girl, Ronan said. Everyone looked at Mara. She walked over to where the scarred man knelt in the dirt, hands bound behind his back. His shoulder was bleeding through his shirt, and his face was pale with pain and fear. When he saw her, something ugly twisted in his expression. Crippled whore, he spat. You think you've won? There's more where we came from. More who'll... Mara hit him with the rifle stock, snapping his head back. Blood exploded from his broken nose. I'm done being called names by men who think I'm easy prey, she said quietly. I'm done being looked at like I'm something to be taken or discarded. She pressed the rifle barrel against his forehead. Give me one reason I shouldn't end you right now. The scarred man's eyes went wide. You wouldn't... I've already killed 2 of your men. What's one more? Her finger found the trigger. One reason. Make it good. Mara, Chen said softly behind her. She ignored him, kept her eyes on the scarred man, watching him squirm. Please, the scarred man whispered. Please, I'm sorry. I didn't mean... Yes, you did. Mara's voice stayed level. You meant every word. But I'm going to let you live anyway. Know why? He shook his head frantically. Because I want you to go back to wherever you came from and tell everyone what happened here. Tell them about the crippled girl who killed your friends and would have killed you too if she'd felt like it. She pressed the rifle harder against his skin. Tell them this mountain belongs to us now, and anyone who comes looking for trouble will find more than they can handle. She pulled the rifle back and turned to Martha. Turn them loose. Take their weapons, their horses, everything. Let them walk back down barefoot if they have to. Martha's smile turned into something like respect. You heard her. Strip them and get them moving. The 2 surviving attackers were relieved of everything but their clothes and pushed back toward the trail. The scarred man tried to say something else, but one of Martha's companions, the bearded one, cuffed him hard enough to shut him up. They watched the 3 men stumble down the mountain, already shivering in the cold. They'll probably die before they reach the valley, Martha observed. Probably, Mara agreed, but that's their problem now. Martha laughed, a sound like stones grinding together. I like you, girl. You've got steel in you. She turned to Ronan. You planning to stay up here, or you finally coming down to civilization? Haven't decided, Ronan said. Well, decide soon. Winter's not over yet, and from what I hear, that cabin of yours burned down. Martha whistled to her companions. We've got a place down in the valley. Trading post, mostly. Always need good hands if you're interested. We'll think about it, Chen said. You do that. Martha swung back onto her horse. And Voss, next time you're in trouble, maybe send word before it becomes a war. Noted. Martha and her people rode off, taking the captured horses and weapons with them. Ronan, Chen, and Mara stood in the snow, surrounded by bodies and blood and the wreckage of the fight. So, Chen said finally, that happened. Mara started to laugh. She couldn't help it. The absurdity of it all, the fear, the fighting, the last-minute rescue, hit her all at once and came out as laughter that bordered on hysteria. Chen joined in, then even Ronan cracked a smile. We're alive, Mara said when she could breathe again. Against all odds, Chen agreed. Against all sense, Ronan added. He looked at the cave, at the burned-out fire, at the trail leading back down the mountain. We can't stay here. Cave's compromised, and there'll be more trouble eventually. So we take Martha's offer? Mara asked. Maybe. Or we find somewhere new, build something better. Ronan met her eyes. Question is, what do you want? Mara thought about it, about the valley, about civilization, about the world that had abandoned her, about this mountain, these men, this life carved out of violence and survival. I want to stop running, she said. Stop waiting for the next attack. Stop being afraid. Then we make a stand, Ronan said. Find a place worth defending and defend it together. Together, Chen echoed. Mara looked at both of them, these men who'd saved her, taught her, fought beside her, who'd given her a reason to keep breathing when it would have been easier to quit. Together, she agreed. The sun broke through the clouds, painting the snow gold and pink. The mountains stretched out around them, wild and beautiful and deadly. But it was theirs now. Won through blood and bullets and sheer stubborn refusal to die. Mara shouldered her rifle and started walking down the trail. Her leg hurt, her body ached, and she was covered in dirt and blood and powder burn. But she was alive, and that was enough. The walk down the mountain took most of the day, and by the time they reached Martha Crane's trading post, Mara's leg was threatening to give out entirely. The building sat at the edge of a small settlement, maybe 20 structures total, scattered along a frozen creek. Smoke rose from chimneys, and the smell of cooking meat made Mara's stomach clench with hunger. Martha met them at the door, a cup of something hot in her hand. Figured you'd come down eventually, got rooms ready if you want them. What's the cost? Ronan asked. He never took anything without knowing the price. Work, same as everyone else. Martha gestured inside. I need hunters, trappers, people who can handle themselves when trouble comes. You three qualify. For how long, Chen asked. Long as it suits you. This isn't a prison. You want to leave, you leave. She looked at each of them in turn. But winter's still got teeth, and you're tired. Stay the season at least. Rest, heal, figure out what comes next. They stayed. The first week was strange. Mara had grown so accustomed to the cramped cave, to the constant vigilance, to sleeping with a rifle in her hands that having a real bed in a real room felt wrong somehow. She'd wake in the night expecting gunfire, reaching for weapons that weren't there. Give it time, Chen said when she mentioned it. He was dealing with the same thing. She could see it in the way he startled at sudden noises, in how his hand would drift toward his hip where his pistol used to ride. Takes a while for the body to believe the danger's past. But the danger hadn't really passed. It had just changed shape. The settlement was full of people with their own stories, their own scars. The blacksmith, Tom, had lost his family to cholera on the trail west. Sarah, no relation to Ronan's daughter, though the name made him flinch every time, ran the general store and never talked about why she'd left St. Louis in such a hurry. Even Martha had secrets, visible in the way she'd touch an old scar on her neck and get quiet. Everyone here was running from something, or toward something, sometimes both. Mara found work helping in the kitchen at first, her bad leg making outdoor work difficult. She peeled potatoes, kneaded bread, gutted chickens. Simple work, mindless work, the kind that let her thoughts wander. And they wandered back, again and again, to the same question. What now? She'd survived. Against all odds, against her father's abandonment and the fever and the raiders, she'd made it through. But survival wasn't living, it was just not dying. And she'd been not dying for so long that she'd almost forgotten what it meant to actually want something beyond the next sunrise. You're thinking too hard, Ronan said one evening. They were in the common room of the trading post, where people gathered after work to eat and drink and pretend they weren't all damaged in their own ways. Trying to figure out what I'm doing here, Mara admitted. Same thing as the rest of us. Existing. That's not enough. Sometimes it has to be. He took a drink from his cup. You expecting more? I don't know what I'm expecting. Mara stared at the fire. I spent so long just trying to stay alive that I never thought about what comes after. After is whatever you make it. That's easy for you to say. You had a life before, a farm, a family, something you built. She looked at him. What do I have? A limp and bad dreams and the knowledge that my own father thought I was worth less than a broken wagon wheel. Ronan was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, My Sarah used to have nightmares. Every night for a year after her mother died. She'd wake up screaming, convinced the fever was coming back for her too. He stared into his cup. I'd sit with her, tell her she was safe, that I'd protect her. And for a year, it worked. She'd calm down, go back to sleep, wake up the next day and be okay. What changed? The fever came back, took her just like it took her mother. His hands tightened on the cup. All that time I spent promising I'd keep her safe, and in the end I couldn't. Didn't matter how much I wanted to protect her. Some things you can't fight with a rifle. Mara didn't know what to say to that. Point is, Ronan continued, you're looking for meaning in what happened to you, some lesson or purpose. But sometimes bad things happen for no reason at all. Your father was a coward. That's not a reflection on you. It's just who he was. But it still happened. I still have to live with it. Yeah, you do. He finally looked at her. But living with it doesn't mean letting it define you. You want to know what you have? You've got 2 working hands, a mind that's sharper than you give it credit for, and enough stubbornness to survive things that should have killed you. That's more than most people start with. And the limp? The scars? Proof you survived. Nothing more, nothing less. He stood. Stop waiting for permission to move forward. Stop thinking you need to earn the right to exist. You're here. You're alive. That's all the justification you need. He left before she could respond. Mara sat alone by the fire, turning his words over in her mind. Stop waiting for permission. Stop trying to earn the right to exist. How long had she been doing that? Years, probably. Her whole life, maybe. Always trying to prove she was worth keeping, worth saving, worth the trouble. And when her father decided she wasn't, she'd almost believed him. But Ronan and Chen had decided differently. Martha had ridden up a mountain to help them. This settlement had taken them in without asking what they'd done to deserve it. Maybe worth wasn't something you proved. Maybe it was something you just had, whether anyone else recognized it or not. The thought felt dangerous. Revolutionary. Like permission to stop apologizing for taking up space in the world. Spring came slowly to the mountain, fighting winter for every inch of ground. The snow receded in patches, revealing brown grass and mud. The creek thawed, its frozen silence giving way to rushing water. Ice fell from the eaves in the warmth of afternoon sun. Mara's leg grew stronger with the constant work. She graduated from the kitchen to helping repair the settlement's outer fence, then to working with the hunters, learning to skin and butcher the animals they brought back. Her hands, once soft and uncertain, developed calluses. Her aim improved from passable to good. Chen watched her progress with something like pride. "You're not the same girl I pulled out from under that wagon," he said one day while they were working on tanning hides. "No," Mara agreed. "That girl died in the snow. I'm what crawled out." "And what's that?" She thought about it. "Someone who doesn't need saving anymore." Everyone needs saving sometimes. Maybe, but the difference is knowing you can save yourself when nobody else will. She finished stretching the hide and moved to the next one. "You're leaving soon, aren't you?" Chen didn't answer right away. "Been thinking about it," he admitted finally. "Martha's place is good, but it's not home. Not sure what is anymore, but it's not here. Where will you go?" "West, probably. California, maybe Oregon. See what's out there." He looked at her. "You could come with me. Start fresh somewhere. Nobody knows your story." It was tempting. The thought of leaving the mountain, the memories, all of it behind and just walking away into something new. But Mara had spent too much time running, from her father's expectations, from the pain of being abandoned, from the guilt of killing. Running never solved anything. It just moved the problem somewhere else. "I'm staying," she said. "With Ronan?" "With myself." She met his eyes. "I spent my whole life being what other people needed me to be. Dutiful daughter, helpful sister, quiet girl who didn't cause problems. And where did that get me? Crushed under a wagon and left to die. So what are you going to be now?" "I don't know yet, but I'm going to figure it out here, where I learned what I'm actually made of." She smiled slightly. "Besides, someone needs to keep Ronan from turning into a complete hermit again." Chen laughed. "That's a full-time job." "I've had worse." He left 2 weeks later, on a clear morning with the sun warming the mud. Most of the settlement turned out to see him off. Martha gave him supplies and a good horse. Tom gave him a knife he'd forged himself. Sarah gave him a letter to carry to her sister in Sacramento, if he made it that far. Ronan shook his hand and said nothing, which was about as sentimental as Ronan got. Mara walked with him to the edge of the settlement, where the trail split between east and west. "You sure about staying?" Chen asked one last time. I'm sure. Ronan's a good man, but he's not easy. He'll push you, expect things from you. Good. I'm done with people who expect nothing. She looked at this man who'd risked his life for her, who'd stayed when leaving would have been smarter. Thank you for everything. You don't need to thank me. I know, but I'm doing it anyway. She pulled something from her pocket, a small carved figure, crude but recognizable. A horse. She'd made it during the long evenings, whittling with a knife Tom had taught her to use. For your journey, something to remember us by. Chen took it, his eyes bright. I won't forget, he said quietly. Any of it. Any of you. Good. Don't. He climbed onto his horse, adjusted his pack, and looked down at her one last time. You're going to be all right, Mara Kincaid. I know. And she did know. For the first time since the wagon, since her father's boots in the snow, since waking up in Ronan's cabin more dead than alive, she actually believed it. Chen rode west, and Mara walked back to the settlement alone. Ronan was waiting by the trading post, watching her approach. He's gone, she said. I know. You going to miss him? Probably. Ronan shifted his weight. You? Yeah, but he was always going to leave. It's who he is. Someone who keeps moving. She stood beside him, both of them watching the empty trail. What about you? You planning to move on too? Where would I go? He gestured at the settlement, the mountain, the sky. This is the first place that's felt like anything since Sarah died. Not home exactly, but close enough. Close enough? Mara echoed. They stood in comfortable silence. Then Ronan said, Martha's talking about expanding, building more structures, maybe starting a proper town. She wants people she can trust to help run it. And she asked you? Asked us, you and me both. He looked at her. Said she needs people who know how to fight when fighting's necessary, but also know when to put the guns down and build something instead. What did you tell her? That I'd think about it, talk to you first. He paused. You've got a say in this. Equal say. Equal. Not guest. Not burden. Not someone who needed protecting or managing. Equal. I think we should do it, Mara said. Build something. Make this place into something worth defending. It'll be hard work. Everything worth doing is. Ronan almost smiled. You sound like my wife. She used to say that, usually right before talking me into some project I didn't think we could manage. Did you manage? Most of the time, when we worked together. He extended his hand. Partners then. Equal shares, equal say. Mara took his hand. His grip was firm, calloused, real. Partners. They told Martha that evening. She broke into a grin that made her look 10 years younger and immediately started planning. The trading post would be the center, she said. They'd build a proper meeting hall, expand the living quarters, maybe even get a school going if they could find someone willing to teach. Big dreams, Ronan observed. Big dreams need big work, Martha replied. You two up for it? We're up for it, Mara said. And they were. The months that followed were the hardest Mara had ever worked. They cleared land, hauled timber, dug foundations. Her hands blistered, then calloused, then blistered again. Her leg ached every day, but she pushed through it. Ronan worked beside her, teaching her things his wife had taught him about building, about making things last. Sarah would have liked you, he said one day while they were framing a new storehouse. She had that same fire, that same refusal to quit. I wish I could have met her. Me too. He hammered in a nail with more force than necessary. She'd be your age now, probably married, maybe with kids. I think about that sometimes, the life she should have had. Does it get easier, thinking about her? No, but it gets different, less like an open wound, more like an old break that aches when the weather changes. He looked at her. You still think about your father? Sometimes. Wonder if he made it to Oregon, if he tells himself he had no choice. Thinks about me at all. She drove her own nail home. But mostly I just feel sorry for him. Sorry? He threw away his daughter to save a few days of travel, made a choice that probably eats at him every day. assuming he has any conscience at all. She stepped back to check their work. I survived and built something new. He'll carry that choice for the rest of his life. So yeah, I feel sorry for him. That's generous. It's honest. Anger takes too much energy, and I've got better things to do with mine. By the time summer arrived full force, the settlement had grown from 20 buildings to nearly 40. New people arrived every week, trappers, hunters, families looking for a fresh start. Some stayed, some moved on. But the ones who stayed helped build, helped defend, helped make the place into something more than just a collection of structures in the wilderness. Mara found herself becoming someone the new arrivals looked to for guidance. They'd ask her about the best hunting grounds, about how to prepare for winter, about what to do when trouble came. She'd answer with the knowledge Ronan had taught her, the skills Chen had helped her develop, the hard-won understanding that survival required community as much as it required strength. One evening, a wagon train pulled through, heading to Oregon, the travelers said. Mara watched them set up camp by the creek, preparing to rest before pushing on. And for just a moment, she thought she saw a familiar figure, her father's height, her mother's way of moving. But when she looked closer, it was just strangers. People with their own stories, their own reasons for heading west. "You all right?" Ronan asked, coming to stand beside her. "Yeah, just thinking about roads not taken." "Regrets? No." And she meant it, just acknowledging the distance between who I was and who I am now. "And who are you now?" Mara considered the question. A year ago, she would have said daughter, sister, burden. 6 months ago, survivor. 3 months ago, fighter. "I'm someone who gets to decide what," she said finally. "No one else gets to tell me what I'm worth or what I'm capable of. That's mine now." "Good answer." She looked at him. "What about you? Who are you now?" Ronan thought about it. "Used to be Sarah's father. Then I was a man waiting to die. Then I was someone teaching a stubborn girl how to walk again." He smiled just slightly. "Now I'm someone helping build a town. Seems like as good a purpose as any." "Better than most," Mara agreed. That night, the settlement gathered for a meal. It had become a tradition. Once a week, everyone contributed something and ate together in the meeting hall they'd built. It was loud and chaotic and messy, full of arguments and laughter and the kind of easy camaraderie that came from shared work and shared purpose. Martha stood to make announcements, new arrivals to welcome, building projects to assign, a vote on whether to send riders to the nearest town to establish regular trade routes. Then she said, "One more thing. Ronan and Mara have been talking about expanding our defenses, making this place secure enough to last through anything. I'm turning the floor over to them." Mara hadn't expected that. She looked at Ronan, who shrugged and stood. "We've been lucky," Ronan said. His voice carried despite being quiet. "But luck runs out. We need watchtowers, better walls, designated positions for defense. We need people trained to fight, but also trained to know when not to fight." He looked around the room. "This place is worth defending, but only if we're all committed to defending it together." "How much work are we talking?" Tom asked. "Weeks, maybe months. Everyone contributes. Everyone learns." Ronan's jaw set. "And everyone fights if it comes to that. No passengers. No one gets to hide while others bleed." There was quiet muttering, some people nodding, others looking uncertain. Then Mara stood. "I know some of you are thinking this is too much work, too much commitment. You came here for a fresh start, not to become soldiers." She looked at their faces, saw her own doubts reflected back. "I get it. I was you, someone who just wanted to survive quietly without causing trouble." "What changed?" someone called out. "I learned that quiet survival isn't enough, that the world will take from you everything you're not willing to defend." She thought about her father, about the wagon, about every moment that had led here. "I learned that the difference between a place worth living in and a place you just exist in is whether you're willing to fight for it, not just with guns, but with sweat and time, and the willingness to say this matters, this is mine, this is worth protecting." The room was very quiet now. "So yeah, Mara continued, "it's going to be hard work. It's It's going to take time. But at the end of it, we'll have something no one can take from us. Not raiders, not winter, not bad luck. We'll have something we built together, something that belongs to all of us. Sarah, the shopkeeper, stood. I'm in. Tom stood next. Me too. One by one, the others stood. Not everyone, but enough. More than enough. Martha was grinning. Looks like we've got our answer. We start tomorrow. They worked through the summer and into fall. The watchtowers went up first, crude but effective. Then came the reinforced walls, the designated fields of fire, the emergency protocols. Mara trained people to shoot, not because she enjoyed it, but because she understood the necessity. Ronan taught them to think tactically, to use terrain, to know when to fight and when to wait. But they also built other things. A proper school, with Sarah teaching the children to read and write. A communal garden that everyone tended. A workshop where Tom trained apprentices in metalwork. A life, not just an existence. Winter came again, fierce and unforgiving, but this time they were ready. The storehouses were full, the walls were strong. The people knew their roles. And when a group of raiders did test their defenses in late January, 8 men looking for easy prey, they found the settlement armed, organized, and unafraid. The fight lasted less than 10 minutes. The raiders retreated, leaving their wounded behind. The settlement's casualties, 2 men with minor wounds, some damage to the north wall. Could have been worse, Ronan said, surveying the damage. Could have been better, Mara replied. But we held. We did. That night, Mara stood on the rebuilt north wall, looking out at the frozen landscape. The mountain rose in the distance, beautiful and terrible, the place where she'd almost died and instead learned to live. She thought about the girl who'd been crushed under a wagon, the girl who'd waited for her father to save her, who'd believed her worth was something others determined. That girl was gone, left behind in the snow with all the other things that didn't survive. In her place was someone harder, someone scarred and limping and very much alive. Someone who'd looked at a world that said she didn't matter and decided to matter anyway. Someone who'd chosen herself when no one else would. Ronan joined her on the wall, 2 cups of something warm in his hands. He passed her one. What are you thinking about? He asked. Everything, nothing, how different things could have been. She sipped the drink, tea, hot and bitter and perfect. If my father had stayed, if you'd closed your door, if Chen had decided I wasn't worth the risk. But he didn't, I didn't, and here you are. Here I am, she echoed, building a life out of the wreckage of the one I lost. That's all any of us can do. Ronan looked out at the settlement below, at the lights in windows and smoke rising from chimneys. Take what's broken and make something new from the pieces. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the settlement they'd helped build settle in for the night. Somewhere below, a child laughed, a dog barked. Life, ordinary and extraordinary, continuing despite everything the world threw at it. You know what the funny thing is? Mara said. My father thought leaving me would save his family, thought sacrifice meant choosing the many over the one. She looked at Ronan. But he was wrong. Real strength isn't choosing who to abandon. It's refusing to abandon anyone. It's saying we all matter or none of us do. He'll never know that. No, but I do, and everyone here does. That's enough. Spring would come again. Summers and winters and all the seasons in between. There would be more threats, more struggles, more reasons to give up or run away. But Mara wasn't running anymore. She'd found something worth defending, not just the settlement, not just the walls and buildings and land, but the idea that people mattered, that worth was inherent, that the abandoned and discarded and broken could build something beautiful if they refused to quit. Her father had taught her what it meant to be chosen against. Ronan and Chen and everyone here had taught her something better, what it meant to choose yourself. That was the lesson she'd carry forward. Not that the world was cruel or that people would let you down, though both those things were true, but that you could survive the cruelty and the disappointment and still become something worth being. That your value wasn't determined by who stayed or who left, but by what you did with the life you had. She'd been left to die in the snow. She'd chosen to live anyway. And in choosing to live, she'd found something her father would never have. A place where she belonged, not because she'd earned it, but because she'd claimed it, because she'd looked at a broken world and decided to build something better from the pieces. The girl left to die had become the woman who refused to quit, and that made all the difference.